Get straight in. Get right to it. Shalom. Yahweh Hashem Yahushua Barakatah. Yahweh Shemal Taba Hashem Yahushua. This is the Isupk. It started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969. We are under commanding General Yohana, here to teach the truth of the Bible to so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. We step off to the side here for a second. As y'all see, what we have been going over in the Sabbath service is directly affecting what we go over in the day before in the Hebrew class, the Lashon Kodash class. Part of building an understanding of any language is, of course, going to come down to vocabulary and sentence structure. But before you start getting into putting sentences together, it's important to get some of the vocabulary down. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to use vocabulary that is most commonly, used on a day-to-day basis. And so, over the past couple of weeks, we have been starting fresh. All camps throughout all of the Isupk have been starting at the beginning of Genesis, and we've been reading 49 chapters every Sabbath service. And so, verse 49, sorry, not 49 chapters, 49 verses, slightly. So the first 49 verses of Genesis 1, and then going into Genesis 2, and then continuing Genesis 2 into Genesis 3, and then so on and so forth. We're going to be going into some of the names of more important people in the scriptures and dealing with people like Adam, dealing with people like Noah, and understanding their names, knowing how to pronounce their names, being able to read it in Hebrew, understanding what their names mean as well. Those are all things that are important. There are brothers that are in the school that have similar names to some of the names we're going to be going over today. And so you can actually see in the Bible where a lot of the biblical names come into play. But what's even more cool is, of course, being able to say them in Hebrew, right? Instead of Jacob, it would be Yaquab. Instead of Adam, it would be Adam, right? And so on and so forth. There's so many names to go over. But we're going to be focusing in on the Hebrew name vocabulary that we're going to be needing for the Sabbath service, which is to be tomorrow morning. And we'll be continuing on that here in a minute. But first, I want to pick up where we left off last time, just to recap some of the vocabulary words that we covered in the previous class. It's always good to do so because I like to do that as a refresher, just to kind of remind people and also give you a chance to write down notes if you missed last class. So now's the time to try to write down some of the vocabulary words and the Hebrew Strong's identification numbers of these characters, of these words and phrases. That way we can start building that vocabulary, right? Scripture says, study to show thyself approved. And the proof of it is in your speech. Proof of it is in your pronunciation of the Hebrew. And one of the most evident ways to know if somebody has been studying is, of course, during the Sabbath service when we call up readers to read. And as the more students start to come into the school, we're going to have more people coming up to read. Okay, up to 7 each Sabbath service. So having brothers and sisters that have been studying in the Hebrew and understanding how to pronounce the characters, that's going to become very important, especially as we move forward with being able to read it more fluently and being able to put together sentences to use on a day-to-day basis in our own conversations. Okay, I like to mention this because there's a certain exclusivity and a certain feeling that comes from having a language to speak that is almost like speaking code right in front of other people, right? If you've ever been at say sisters out there, if you've ever been at like a nail salon or a hair salon that is owned by, say, for instance, Asians, right? And they may be speaking to each other in their own language and laughing and joking, and you're wondering if they're not talking bad about y'all or if they're just bringing something up that you wish you understood what they were saying. It's very exclusive, right? Every race should have their own language. In fact, the Most High created the nations on the earth to have their own culture and heritage. Black, Hispanic, and Native American people have been speaking the languages that were forced upon them. And so part of us becoming free is us also becoming free from having English and Spanish as our primary languages. Okay? We take a lot of pride in the languages that we speak because we excel in every art, whether it be music, whether it be writing, and we use their languages to do so because we have been raised from youth to speak those languages. Well, how much more important is it now to come back to our language to then begin to build our own art, literature, and things like that in the original tongue, which is, of course, Lashon Kodash, which is the ancient Paleo Hebrew. Beginning, of course, with none other than the Most High's name, which means He is. We have Yahweh, Yahweh, and Ha. Where the last two are connected, it becomes Yahweh. Again, for those of you that mind the glare right here, we're not going to be using many prepositions this class. We have, of course, the entire alphabet of the Lashon Kodash. There are no vowels in this alphabet. If anything seems like it's a vowel, it is not. It is a consonant. Hebrew language does not use vowels, and so we don't have any extra characters aside from, of course, when we go to the Assyrian Hebrew, there are certain characters that have a variant that pertains to the end of the phrase. But we're not going to be using that today. We're going to be using the Lashon Kodash exclusively for our vocabulary and for our names that we cover today. So, continuing here, we have light, a war. A war means light or glow. You understand? Means heavenly luminaries. That can, of course, include the suns, the stars, the moons, things that produce light. Now, what I brought this up last class, the moon is considered a light because it is able to absorb and reflect the rays that come from the sun. As much as the sun is able to reach the moon, that is what is shown when it is displayed in the sky here on Earth. So if the sun is being blocked by the Earth to any particular degree between the moon and the sun, then that's how you get the different ways that the moon will look in the sky. It is considered a luminary as well because it's almost like acts kind of like a mirror that the light from the sun is bouncing onto and then reflecting light on the Earth. So there is light that comes from it, but it is not the original source of the light. It comes from the sun. Of course, the sun is just one of many stars that are in space. So light, when it refers to a war, could mean multiple things. The word or name for star is Kawakab. That would be another name for light, but that is more direct to the actual light that provides light in our solar system. Light in this case could be light from a candle, it could be light from an electronic, light bulb and things like that. It could be light from the star. It's actually referring to the actual brightness itself and not the actual source of the light. So light is a war. Understand? Last class, we, of course, started going into vocabulary in Genesis, and beginning is pronounced Ra'ash Yath, which means beginning. Beginning. If you were to use a preposition, you would say Hara'ash Yath. So technically speaking, Genesis could be called Hara'ash Yath, or at least that's what you see in the very first verse of Genesis, where it says in the beginning, where it would say Baha Ra'ash Yath. You understand? But Ra'ash Yath is the root word for beginning, and that is H7225 in the Strong's definitions, in the Codex for the Strong's definitions. All right. Some of the other things that we went over, of course, we're talking about Genesis, so we went and talked about angels or powers that is referred to during the creation of all things, where the Most High created these powers to then follow His orders and then start to create everything on the earth. We would call them angels in English, but in the Hebrew they are pronounced Alahayam. Alahayam. So when you read in the Hebrew Bible, when you read it in Hebrew, the phrase Alahayam is used where Allah means power, Hayam means Yam is a plural word. So that you know that there are multiple powers that the Most High, of course, orders to create things. All right. So again, Genesis chapter 1, where the Most High talks about that. He mentions the word Alahayim, and then I believe 1 in 26 is when he says, "Let us make man in our image." And who is it that he's talking to? He's talking to the powers which are subservient to him. They are known as angels, and they are militant. Okay, we covered this already. The word Allah just means power. Now, in the Bible, that word translates into English as God, or at least lowercase God. In some cases, you may see When the Most High's name is mentioned, it may use Elohim, it may use Yahweh, or it may say other things in English like the Most High, or it may say the Lord. Very rarely does it directly refer to God as God, but when it does, usually these words are used and not this right here. It's important to know because the Muslim faith bases their faith off of their language, and their language comes from Hebrew. So Arabic is a language that came after Hebrew because the people that come from the seed of Ishmael, they originate also from the seed of Shem. And of course, when you read, we're actually going to be going to some of these names today. Noah, for example. Noah had his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And of course, we know that Israelites come from the seed of Shem, but their close relative or cousin in this case would be Ishmael, would be somebody that also spoke the Lashon Kodash originally. So some of the things may carry over. Some of the phrases they use may have a similar sound. You understand? They may spell it different, the language will look different, the characters will look different, but there is some things that are common. Say, for instance, one of the words in the, this isn't really an Arabic language class, but I'm just going to cover real quick. Abba, or Abba, means father. Abba. And that is the same whether it's in Hebrew or in Arabic. Abba. That's just one example. I'm not going to go into many examples on that, but you get the idea. Just know that Hebrew is the original language. Genesis 1 and 6, where waters are mentioned, mayum can mean elements, or it can mean of danger, violence, and transitional things. This is important because the scripture goes on to talk about how the firmament was used to separate elements that were outside of the firmament from the elements that were inside of the firmament, separating them and creating an ecosystem that allowed things on Earth to focus on grouping together with other molecules and elements that were only on Earth and not beyond. Now it says, mayum means of danger, violence, and transitional things. When you think of water, water is the same way. Water is very transitional. It flows. It is very violent, especially if it is affected by winds. Or say, for instance, if the moon is in a spin that is a little bit closer to the Earth, you'll actually get more gravity from it, and that pulls the waves higher from the ground, and that's how you get waves that are larger. You understand? And so keeping that in mind, the firmament separates elements outside of Earth from the elements inside of Earth, and that was one of the foundational moves that the Most High did to then start to create this Earth that we live in, this sphere. The Earth is not flat. The Earth is considered more along the lines of a sphere, right? And there's proof of that. If you were to go high enough in the air, if you were to go into space and look down on the Earth, you'd see that, right? So there's no denying that. All right. So again, H7549 is pronounced Rakwa Yai. Rakwa Yai. Rakwa Yai, which means extended surface or barrier expanse. Extended surface or barrier expanse. Barrier is an important term to understand with the vocabulary of the word firmament. And we talked about this last class, it was a couple of weeks ago, because we didn't have Hebrew class last Friday. The barrier is considered a protective layer. Most High actually goes as far as to call this protective layer on the earth heaven. As he says in the scriptures that follow after he creates the firmament. He says, and called the firmament heaven. And why is that? Because it encompasses what would be known in the future as a heaven, which would be the dominion that Christ will rule once he comes back to earth. Well, guess what? That earth has a wall around it. Just like how, just to say this, Donald Trump wants to build a wall around America. Why? Because he wants to create a barrier that expands across the borders of America to protect America from being, easily accessed by outside sources, right? Well, the Most High has done that for the entire earth. And he didn't have to pay anybody to do it. He just ordered it for it to happen, and it happened. extended surface. This is another thing to understand about this firmament. This firmament is not just one thin layer. It is a multiple layered group of dense molecules that create the firmament. You understand? And so that is another reason why whenever Esau tries to launch rockets up into the sky, a lot of them end up blowing up because they hit different layers of this extended surface. Rakwayai, ozone layer, aka firmament, aka barrier expanse, aka extended surface, aka heaven. Because again, it encompasses the earth, and the earth is going to be a heaven at some point. It is not right now because it is now ruled by the righteous. But nonetheless, it is the outline of the bounds of what Israel is supposed to have dominion over. So firmament H7549, Rakwaya, water, my yum yum. My yum, that alone I believe means water, but my yum yum is talking about multiple waters, elements. When you think of water, the first thing that comes to mind is the elements that create water, H2O, right? Those are elements. Those are two different elements, two different types of elements, three different actual atoms themselves. So you have elements, you have the everything that the Most High used to separate outside of the earth, the inside of the earth. Then you have heaven, and then of course, when you get further into Genesis chapter 1, then those elements start to form together. Some of them start to create solid structures. Some of them start to create structures that float on the water, or maybe even expand from the depths of the sea all the way to the core of the earth in a more permanent fashion. And this is what you would call aratazah. Earth, land, or ground. The Bible refers to the earth as aratazah, just to keep things plain and simple, H776. But that earth, that term, literally does mean the ground as well. And if you need an example of that, you can go to Jeremiah chapter, 14:2, where it says, Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground. Well, the word ground in that scripture is aratazah, dark unto the earth, meaning dark like the earth. Guess what that's referring to? Referring to the color of the people in the Bible and the color of the ground of the earth. You understand? Which we know is brown. And we also know that the elements that make up our bodies are the same elements that the earth is made of. None of the elements in your body are made of anything outside of the firmament, so to speak, but are rather carbon and oxygen, hydrogen, things like that. There are main minerals, and then there are trace minerals, right, that make up our bodies. So earth, another important word that is when you see all throughout the Bible, aratazah. So we have Yahweh, Most High's name, Genesis, Ra'ashiah, light, a war, powers or angels, Allahayim. Power by itself, Allah. Genesis 1:6, waters, it's actually an S. Waters, Mayum Yum. Heaven, Shamayim. See that? Earth, Aratazah. So those are the vocabulary words we covered last class. I'm going to leave this on the board for a minute. If you have any questions, if you have any words that you want broken down, any vocabulary words that you may find while you're reading, this class is for you. So you can type in either a Strong's identification number or just the word itself, and we can find them in the Old Testament, and we can write them on the board so that you can learn how to pronounce them and learn what they mean. You understand? I'm going to leave this on the board for a minute, then I'm going to erase. Most I practice it. All right. We'll give it another moment here. Make sure to share the class, both will share. All right. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm just gonna share the class real quick. One more second, y'all. 1 second. All right. I've got quite a few to go over today. One of the interesting things about Genesis is that Genesis sets up, it takes the entire book of Genesis to get to the point where we are actually talking about Israel. Because before Israel, there were people that came before our forefathers, and that's where most of the world has a common ancestry, especially once you do with Noah, and in its root form, Adam, of course. So, of course, we want to recognize those pinnacle names in the Bible by breaking them down and covering them in what they mean. Okay, so Adam himself, of course, you'll see this all throughout Genesis, and his name is. Adam. It's not too complicated. That's an easier one to remember. Adam or Adam, right? Get the pen. See how this one is pronounced. Adam. Again, keep in mind, we use the characters ah, da, and ma. We have connectors, and then we have these little frowny face looking things that mainly tell you to just pronounce that word by itself. Ah, da, and then ma. Right here. But since this is the end of the connection, of course, for Hebrews, we have from right to left, for those of you that are new. As we go from this character to this character, you pronounce the entire part of this, which is da, but then you finish it with the beginning of the pronunciation of it, which is ma. But that, because it's at the end, you just use the sound. So it's Adam. Adam. All right. If I were to write that in the Assyrian, which is what you're going to see during the Sabbath service, right? Adam. It's the exact same thing. We're just using the other dialect of Hebrew. Okay. Y'all see that? I hope it's clear. Let me check to see if the image is clear. Hold on. 1 second. Adam. Yeah, there you go. Hey, what is the power for the? What is the? Hold on, so I see a question in the chat. The Bible. So just to recap this, the main word for Paleo Hebrew, we call it by its original form, which is holy tongue. La Shawan Kodash. It looks like this. La Sha Wa Na. La Shawan. Right, these two are connected. And then you have Kwa, Da, and then finally Sha. So Kodash. La Shawan Kodash. That's what you call the language. That's what you call the language. You understand? She asked a really good question. That question was, what is the Hebrew name for the Bible? We went over this a couple of classes ago. We'll cover that again. Sa Wa Ra. Sa Wa Ra. Or in English, it's Torah, but it's pronounced Sa Wa Ra. Torah, which means law. But it also means orders. And the reason why you can call the, now of course the Tawal Ra is in its most elementary form referring to the first 5 books of Moses. That's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, because that is the foundation that was set forth from the Most High through Moses. Okay? But the entire Bible is a book of orders. And so this, when you include, of course, all the prophets, when you include the Apocrypha, when you include the New Testament, it's also going to refer as the entire Bible as orders and law and lessons and things like that. So Thawal Ra is a word that is perfectly acceptable to use as Bible, because the word Torah means orders and law. Okay, so you could use that. Actually, you know what? That's an interesting question, because if you were to look up the word Bible in the Bible, there is no word Bible in the Bible. There is, however, Testament. Testament. That is another term for the Bible as well. And like I said, and this is why I say this. Here, let me get that real quick. Testament. Testament also means orders. It also can mean covenant. Which is why these two terms are closely related, Testament and Torah. Okay, so they are technically interchangeable because of that. I'll leave those on the board because those are, of course, good definitions, good words to have. The word Testament in the Torah, or in the Old Testament, covenant is what you're looking for, and that word is baryath. Baryath. Baryath, which means covenant. The word testament is not in the Old Testament, but the word covenant is, and it has the same definition as testament. So I hope y'all get that. I hope that answers your questions. Yes. So the word "the" has more than one use. If the word "the" is used in a sentence, I'll show you that too. It is considered a preposition. Think of the as like a filler word, okay? Think of the as a filler word. Where you see this ha right here, if I were to say the beginning, we read over this. Beginning is Barasha. See, it's like Rasha. Rasha. This is beginning. The root word for beginning is this. The individual word for the word the, it's not in a sentence, it's not separated by itself in most cases. It is normally added to whatever word it's being associated with. Like if it says the store or the dollar or the beginning, you're just adding the preposition ha to the beginning of it. So ha would be right here. The beginning. See that, sis? So the pronunciation of beginning is Ra'ashya. But forging it to become part of a sentence, Ha-Ra'ashya. Ha-Ra'ashya. That's just one example. There may be others that we can cover if we start to, like I said, when we go over them during the Sabbath service, you'll see that plenty because the word the is another very commonly used word. You see that all throughout the Bible. I'll give you one more example. If you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 6, and it says, the waters, you have Ha, and then you have Mayam, or the water. Hamayim. Think of it as a modifier, okay? But the technical term for it is preposition. And a lot of those filler words, we use a particular character for each one. Say, for instance, like la. If we say something like la yasha'ala during the Sabbath service, a brother is given a sip of wine before we start reading the Torah or the Tawot Ra. And that brother will then turn to the audience, hold the glass up like a toast, like when you think about like a formal dinner or something like that. This is a formal thing during the Sabbath service. So that toast is for Israel, okay? Where it says La Yasha'ala, that is an ancient custom as well. La Yasha'ala. So the preposition in that phrase is La, which means two, or four. Two or four actually are interchangeable. For Israel, to Israel is the same thing. So we have quite a bit here. I'm going to try to break this up, make it look a little more neat. It's only possible to make the board look somewhat neat, right? It can't look real perfect. I have to make sure to draw a lot of information. But the good question, sis. Why for asking that? That's good. Very good. Now, when we go to back to Genesis, let's see what other names we're going to run into. Let's see if anybody recognizes this one. This one is Cha Na. Cha Na. This looks like this. You have the character Cha, and you have Na, and then you have Ka. Chana. This word means dedicated. Chana. Where Adam is the Hebrew name for Adam in the English. Kanak is the Hebrew name for Enoch in the Old Testament. You understand? The other word or definition for Kanak is to train, which also takes a lot of dedication. Dedication is innately something that you're training to do. If you're dedicated to school, you do a lot of learning, which is also similar to the word training. Okay, when you dedicate yourself to any sport, you have to train to forge your body to have the muscle memory to perform as efficiently as possible for that particular sport. It's crazy because somebody that's really athletic may be good at football, but then put them on a basketball court and they move like a brick. Or maybe they've been, training on both sports, so they have the ability to move around fluently on both. But it takes a lot of training for any particular skill. You can't just have a basketball player be thrown into, soccer league or what they call football leagues in other countries and expect them to perform at the highest level, right? It takes a lot of training to do so. It takes a lot of dedication, and dedication cannot be split up so many ways that dedication is then watered down, and then the skill or the training is watered down, and that becomes an issue. Kanak is somebody that is dedicated. Enoch, we're not going to talk about the book of Enoch or anything like that because that's not a part of the Bible. But Enoch is something that you're going to see in the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis. Kanak. We got a brother in the school by the name of Kanak, and that brother has dedicated himself to the Rio Grande Valley, the Isupk. Amen. And officer of 1,000 Yashikar, Bon Yashikar, down there close to the border of Mexico. You understand? These dedicated brothers. These are brothers that are trained to be leaders. Okay? Dedicated. That's what Enoch is. Let me see here. Another name that is important, and this is because I kind of want to cover this a little bit, but probably in the next class I'll do so, going over some of the numbers, particularly the very high numbers. And the reason why I bring this name up is because this is somebody that lived for a very long time, according to the Bible. His name is Methuselah. Methuselah, or in the Hebrew, it is Mathawash. Mathawashla. Mathawashla. This is actually separate. If you look this up, this is Shalah. Particularly La, meaning Ka. Right? Very long name. This person lived for a very long time. His name actually means man of the dart. This word dart also can mean missile. It's modern term, but it actually means something more like a spear. A spear is like a staff that is thrown and has a pointed object, which will then do damage on whatever it hits. And that's exactly what a missile is, and that's exactly what a dart is. In fact, I'll even break that down because part of his name is Shalach, Mathashalach, which means man of the Shalach. Shalach means weapon, missile, or shoot. That's what Shalach means. Think of it as like Mathawashalach or Methuselah is a name that means a man of weaponry. I I got a question. Who is more dangerous, the swordsman or the swordsmith? The one who uses the weapons or the one who creates the weapons? Thinking of that, think about that. That's a question for the chat. We'll see what kind of answers y'all come up with. Who is more dangerous, the swordsman or the swordsmith? Well, we know that Methuselah is a name that means user of weapons or man of weapons. You understand? We'll check the chat here again to see if there's any more questions. That's right, sis. That's right. Because one soldier can go into battle and he can perish. But normally the swordsmith is the one that provides weapons for many soldiers. And that is a warlord in and of itself. Right? Plus, a lot of times a swordsmith is also good with the weapons as well. So he's more versatile. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Another name, and I like the layout here, even though there's kind of, I'm trying to separate them off so that you can kind of see what goes with what. One thing that I haven't been putting is the Strong's numbers. So let me go back and do that real quick before I forget. Atoms, I'm going to use the green mark for this. Make it easier for you to see it. This is important to have in your notes too. There's H120. Then you have Hanak or Enoch in the English, H2596. We have Matawashala, which is H, I'm going to put it kind of quicker here, 4968. So these are the newer definitions we're using today. Shalak specifically is H7973, which means weapon, missile, javelin, spear, that sort of thing. All right, got another definition here. Another name, so to speak. Now we have Lama. Lamach, or Lamech in the Bible, in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, which means powerful. Lamach, which means powerful. This is in the Bible. Let me get my other marker. It's crazy. Lamach, H3929. Okay. 3929. Lamach's name means powerful. But who is Lamach in the book of Genesis? He is the father of Noah. This is a very interesting thing because now we know Noah's pedigree is that he was raised by a powerful man, or at least somebody whose name meant powerful. Okay, this was somebody that was able to raise Noah with the right mindset of being virtuous and being upright. Okay, somebody had to train Noah to be raised up to be a good man, to have faith in the Most High, to not have doubt about his mission. That alone is a powerful thing. The will, the dedication, right? Kanak, in that sense. Kanak can mean a name, and it can mean the verb as well, or the adjective. Lamach could be an adjective or a name. A lot of these words, they can be names as well as used in sentences. You understand? When you think of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, our people tend to give ourselves names that have meaning even in regular conversation, right? Um, Heck, even rappers do the same thing. They'll always say Lil Glock, or it could be like, you know, I don't even want to think of any examples right now, honestly. What I'm trying to tell you is that what they're doing though is something that they've always done. We've always named our children. We've always named even our pets after certain features about themselves, right? Something that describes them, right? Somebody can have a dog that's dark skinned and call him, Blackie or something like that, or call him Midnight. You know what I mean? I've seen a dog named Midnight before. He was a dark colored dog. You know what I mean? Or milk chocolate would be the name for like a brown haired dog or something like that, or white chocolate for a white poodle or something like that. Our people are always doing it. And so Lamont has this name, which from the time that he was in the womb was given his mother and father the idea of this baby being strong. Maybe he had strong kicks while he was in the womb. By the time he was born, he was given his name. This is the father of Noah. Lamach, father of Noah. I didn't go over the Assyrian in these, so we'll write them at the end of the class here. If I have room. A lot of times I don't have room for them. But going down the lineage, quite naturally, we have Noah, then his son, we have Noah's father, Lamach, who begat Noah. And Noah's name is pronounced Nach. There's a brother in school named Nach. I'm not saying he was Nach, I'm just saying. Nach. Nach. Which means rest. The definition, it's a very long definition. Noah, which means rest. He's the son of Lamech, father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, builder of the ark, which saved his family from the destruction of the world, which the Most High sent on the world by the flood, became the new seminal seed of mankind because his family were the only survivors of the flood. So again, we're not just going over any names. We've gone over Adam. We brought up Enoch. We brought up Methuselah, somebody of renowned name because of how long they lived, hundreds of years, right? A lot longer than how we live, that's for sure. Lamach, which is Noah's father, a powerful man who gave birth to a very diligent son who took dozens of years to build an ark for one major event. And that major event kept mankind from going extinct. You understand what I'm saying? Like, without what Noah did, me and you wouldn't be here watching this class, tuning into the class. We wouldn't have the innovations that we've had. We wouldn't have the life that we have because the Most High ordained for Noah to be the, I guess you could say, the gateway to the progenitor to where everyone on earth does come from Adam. Now, again, in the book of Genesis, it clearly states that male and female created he, them. This was before Adam was even mentioned. And so there were other people on the earth at the time that Adam walked the earth. But because everybody on the earth perished except for Noah and his family, we do know, according to the scriptures, that these were men that came from a lineage that derived all the way to Adam. So in essence, now, yes, everybody on the earth does come from Adam. However, there were other people on the earth at the time of Adam, but the people on the earth now do not derive from those others. They do derive from Adam himself because of that. Okay, so Noah. Let me write down this is H. 5146. H5146. Not. We'll get a chair right quick. I'm just getting this chair so I can get better writing angle on the board here. Now, as we go into the Sabbath service tomorrow, we're going to have started to cover pretty much all the names that are on the board here. So Noah, who begat his 3 sons. We have Shem, and that's quite literally just Shah and Ma. Shem. How you gonna get it here? It's like, yeah, I think it was. Pronounced Ham. Shem, Ham, Japheth. My handwriting here is not the best, right? I never claimed to be. All right. So we got Shem, whose name actually does come from the word memorial or monument. His name means monument. Or definitive position. Meaning foundation. Now, this is an important thing because his name itself means the foundation. Why is that important? Because it is through the seed of Shem that began to branch off and separate all the sons of Noah from the rest of the people of the world. Remember, Noah's sons repopulated the earth. So Shem became the monument or the definitive position of what would become the covenant that the Most High has with mankind, which would eventually be the children of Israel. Okay, so Shem is like, it goes from like as far as importance, Adam, all the way down to Lamech, all the way to Noah or Noach, then it would go to Shem. And so the Bible follows and it mentions families all throughout, Esau and Ishmael, and all the others that came from these forefathers. But then it starts to narrow down the specifics of who God started to deal with. And so even Shem's name is a monumental name. It just in itself, it was almost like prophecy that it came to be that way. If I go to Ham, his name means hot, like literally hot, and it's that makes sense because the other definition of Ham is collective name for Egyptians, various peoples. Let me see. Father of the dark-skinned races. If you go to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, the seed of Ham was the progenitor of the Egyptians and of a lot of the African tribes. Again, these people were dark-skinned people. Noah was a dark-skinned man. Shem was dark-skinned. Ham was dark-skinned. So while these people were both a dark-skinned people, they are not exactly the same inheritance because the foundation goes through Shem. So Ham's name, or Ham, I join them together like this. It means collective name for Egyptians or Africans. because they started to deal with that side of the land. That particular continent is where most of them settled. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. This is important because this becomes a cut whenever somebody tries to tell you, well, it was black people that sold black people into slavery. That's one of the default arguments to get blurted out by hecklers that are on the streets during camp. And so you have to be able to differentiate the seed of Shem from the seed of Ham, and understanding that their name Ham literally means the people from Egypt, Africa. That was what their name is by definition. That they are progenitors of the dark-skinned races that are not from the seed of Shem or Sham. So that's an important thing. Japheth, his name is, let me see what that means, because I got to read it right here too. Yapath. Yapath. His name means open. Yapath. Yapath. Open. It says, the third son of Noah, whose descendants after the flood settled on the coastal lands of the Mediterranean, spreading north into Europe and parts of Asia. So these would be people that we're dealing with, other people on that side of the world. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't particularly talking about the Asians, because Asians actually do come from the seed of Shem by way of Ammon and Moab. But Yapath does deal with some of the other people that are further out north of the Mediterranean, northeast of the Mediterranean. Okay. Opened is what their name is. How much on your pot? But let me get the identification numbers here as well. I want to make sure to have that. So H8034 for Sham. Ham, we just had it. This is H2526. And Yapath, who's H3315. And we're going to briefly recap what we talked about today, because this is a lot of information. These classes in particular are designed to give you short bursts of a lot of information without being too overwhelming. That's the main goal of the Lashon Kodash class, is to give you things that are going to help you remember. But much like how when you're in school, if the class goes for too long, a lot of that information is not easily retained because of the fatigue that happens during the practical setting. Now, of course, hold on, give me 1 second. During the Sabbath service, it is something that requires a lot more attention and endurance and focus. But what these classes are going to be doing is they're going to serve as a warm-up for the Sabbath services. And that's why seeing these names now will give you an advantage when we get into reading a lot of these names later on, because not only are you going to know how to pronounce them, you'll know what they mean, you'll know how they fit into the Bible, you'll know what the importance is of these names and some of these other words that we've talked about today. So we're going to recap by repeating what these words are, how they're said, and what they mean, and then we'll close out the class on that. So starting from the top, the sister's question earlier was, what do we call the Hebrew language? In the English, we prefer to call it the Holy Tongue, but it is also known as the ancient Paleo-Hebrew. Okay, but the word Paleo is not something that we deal with in the scriptures, but Holy Tongue is what it is referred to, and that is pronounced Lashawan Kodash. Lashawan Kodash, the Holy Tongue. The beginning, Genesis. Ha-Ra'ashya. We covered that in last class, at the beginning of this class. Ha-Ra'ashya. Okay? Water, or the water. Mayim, or Ha-Mayim, for the water. Okay? Ha-Mayim. The first name that we covered today, H120, is Adam, which means man. Adam. Adam. Did we even write down his name definition? Mankind, or first man. That's Okay. Sister asked another question. What do we call the Bible in Hebrew? We call it the Thawarah, which means Torah or laws or orders, or we could call it Bariath, which means testament, which also means orders, and it also means covenant. So when you're reading the Bible, you're reading a book of orders, and you're reading the book of the covenant of Israel. So you can refer to it as Thawarah, you can refer to it as Bariath. Another name that we covered today, Methuselah, which is Matawa Shalach, which means man of the spear, man of the dart, or man of weapons. Matawa Shalach, somebody who lived hundreds of years in the Bible. I forget the exact number. What was it, like 800 or something? It was a long time. And it's going by the same because in the beginning we had an understanding of the lunar cycle and how long it takes for a year. So for it to say that he lived over 800 years is not an exaggeration. It is actually, it shows just what state the earth was in at the time. The nutrients on the earth, the level of oxygen on the earth at the time, you know what I'm saying? The level of quality of life that the people had on the earth to live that long. We can't say the same thing today. We can say we have cars and planes and stuff now, but what good is that when we only live 80 years old, maybe cracking 85, 90 years old? Most of us getting, health issues as early as 30 or 40 years old and being dead and decaying by the time we're in our late 40s and 50s and 60s. So Methuselah, Matawa Shalach. It's a pretty important name. It's a very amazing feat that he was able to accomplish in living that long. Then we have Enoch or Hanak, which means dedicated or it means to train, dedication. Then we have Noah's father, Lamech, which means powerful. This is again H3929. This is the name of the father of Noah, who raised a son that was going to save our species. According to the Bible, Noach, whose name means rest, is pronounced Noach in Hebrew, or the Lashon Kodash. It's pronounced Noah in the English, and its Strong's definition number is H5146. Noach, which means rest. And I kind of find it hard to understand that his name is rest because he put in a lot of work throughout the 80 years. It was a long time. He built that ark for a long time. You understand? So I don't know how he had time to rest, but his name meant rest. I bet by the time that he was chilling on the ark while the whole world was flooded, then he finally found rest that day for sure. To know that his hard work paid off and that his family would survive the destruction that the Most High set forth on the earth by way of Hamayim, by way of water. Next, we have the foundational or definitive position of the root of David through Noah, through Adam, goes all the way to Shem, or Shem in English. Shem in the Hebrew is H8034. And then you see it's just Shah and Ma put together, which means monument. So Shem or Shem is a monumental person in our history because he comes from the root of Noah, and the earth was repopulated by these three men and their families here. Then we have Ham or Ham, H2526. That name means hot. It's a collective name for the Egyptians and Africans, and according to the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, the word Ham, by definition, is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes, meaning not the ones that come from Shem. So there are multiple forms of dark-skinned people on the earth. In fact, Japheth was also one of them too, because again, their father was dark-skinned. You understand? It's just the way it works. This is how it was. If anybody tries to tell you otherwise, if you ever see an image of Adam in the garden with the little leaf covering his privates and he's light-skinned, that's a fairy tale. That's not scientifically possible, and it's not biblically accurate. You understand? Adam was made from the dust of the ground, which we went over the word aratazah, which means the earth, the dirt, the elements of the earth, the darkness of the ground. Yaphath's name in the English, I actually didn't write that. It's Japheth. Japheth, Noah's third son. His name means open. He opened up the whole entire North Mediterranean to settle. So that was his purpose. He filled in a lot of the other, other nations that ended up settling as well. But this is going to be a foundation for our understanding tomorrow for our Sabbath service. Having these definitions, some of these vocabulary words and names, getting familiar with them is an important part of us remembering how to pronounce them, because before you know it, if you practice reading these and pronouncing these enough, then whenever you see those names or ever even hear those names being mentioned, you'll automatically remember, oh, Adam, that's Adam. Oh, Tanakh is Enoch. Noah is Nach, right? Lamach is Noah's father. These are things that we have to start remembering. Thawarah means Torah or Bible in that sense. All right, so we have to continue to build our vocabulary before we can start to put in all the supportive structures to help build the sentences. We're going to continue to hit that. And then, of course, as we start to get more experience with reading the Sabbath service scrolls and things like that, you'll start picking up on how sentence structure is put together. You'll also start noticing how a lot of these root words are then modified to fit into a sentence. I myself have been learning a little bit of Spanish, and I'm noticing that Spanish does that as well, where a word that has a root form can be adjusted to fit into a sentence, but it requires a modification of the original word. So Hebrew actually does do that. And that's something that I'm noticing that is a bit of a similarity, as opposed to English, which doesn't necessarily do that, but it's difficult in its own ways. All right? Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to check the chat one more time, and then we're going to close up for today. Now I'm going to leave this on the board, and we'll recap on this next class. Again, make sure to tune in tomorrow to Isupk San Antonio Sabbath service. We should be getting started at 11 a.m. Central Time sharp. Aside from that, our channel on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, those social media pages will be constantly updated with more content. We continue to have more content coming towards you. This weekend, I'll be re-airing our immigration mission that we went on months ago, because we're going to be doing that again in this month, towards the end of the month. So I wanted to repost that. You're going to be seeing that go on premiere tomorrow. We also have more camp video speakings. I know that if those of you that see this video later on, you're going to see that we've been consistently uploading more content for our viewer audience to really soak up. We've been getting a lot of action out there, prophesying against this wicked kingdom and doing everything that we got to do to maintain the Lord's work. You understand? Brothers and sisters out there, continue to fight your fight. Continue to fight against your flesh, and make sure to study. This is a part of it. Learning the Hebrew is a part of it. So treat it with the same level of dedication that you would do for learning the scriptures themselves, right? Because we have to fight back every bit of the way to get our culture back. And that is why the Isupk, the Commander General Yohana, has men out here doing this work, teaching the way we teach, holding classes every day during the week, really hitting the ground running and staying consistent and fight through our own personal battles to make sure that we bring you the highest quality understanding and information necessary for you to thrive and grow in this truth. You understand? So for all of Israel out there, of course, we won't continue to run prayers and things like that. For all of you out there, reach out to us if you have any questions, if you have need of any counsel or anything like that, because we're always available for our people. We are here to serve y'all. You understand? And so with that, we'll go ahead and close out the class on that note. Again, be sure to reach out to us if you have any questions, if you have anything that needs to be covered. And then we'll continue to work together with all the other camps to start to go through the book of Genesis during the Sabbath service. Tune in for that tomorrow morning. With that, shalom, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh, Barakatam to all the brothers. Yahweh, Shemar, Adam, Hashem, Yahweh, to all the sisters. And with that, shalom.